welcome back to another episode. Alright, today is going to be a bit of a breakdown / Q&A on this commercial I posted on my channel recently. I was just the DOP on this one. I'm not going to play it all again, but essentially it's this Montage professionals type commercial. I also asked what you guys thought this could be for, because a lot of these Montage type ads, it's quite hard to work out what the product is sometimes, until you see the logo at the end. So this was for a watch company, but there were some pretty good responses. Mayonnaise ad. Alrighty, first of the gear we shot this on was the red with a combination of a few different lenses actually. We used the Angeno 1540, the Lomo Illuminers, and the DZO Vespids. Most of it was shot on the Illuminers, but we had the other lenses there just for a few extra shots when we needed them. Alright, so a lot of people asked about the pre-production, so we'll kind of go into that. This was a 3-day shoot. We shot all the shots with people in them. Everything else with the macros, the time-lapse of the buildings, was stock footage. It's not really possible to go out there and film all that stuff in the time frame that you've got for commercials, so if you can get it from stock, sometimes you just have to do that. So as a DOP on commercials, you usually come onto a job when there's quite a lot already been done, like the storyboard's already in place, some of the locations have been found, and you're first getting up to speed with what the vibe of what the shoot is. Then doing a location recce of all the places, and sometimes there's a few different options for locations and you can have a bit of a say with which ones work best for you. But sometimes there's only one and you just have to go there and chat with the director in the space where you both think would be the best place to do the shot. And for me on the recce, I would also consider, how many shots there are, how much lighting gear we'd need, is there any lighting already there, what time of the day do we want to be there, where's the power located, what kind of gear you're going to need to get these shots. So for this one we had 8 or 9 locations I think, that we looked at in one long recce day. So there's a lot to juggle around in that 3-day shoot, and you can't always be at every location at the best time of the day you want to be there. Someone asked about audio recording on set. We didn't have any audio in this one. All of it was done in post. These ads in general are cheaper. Well, not necessarily cheaper, they're just less risky because it's a montage. You can alter it way easier in post if people change their mind about certain shots. If you're shooting a scene with people talking in the kitchen and we're selling mayonnaise, there might be 5 or so shots in that ad. If they don't like the way that it's looking in the edit, it's much harder to change that. So it's just a bit safer and easier to do it this way. Okay, so this first scene of our guy here on the piano, we shot this one on the Illuminers and we shot this at T1.3. You can see all the blooming and the highlights that's happening back there. So up there on the back on the balcony, we had a tungsten Source 4 Leco and then a couple of other 650 watt tungsten lights. And then we just left on the house lights in the theatre. So we just had these little spots of lights everywhere. The Source 4 light that we had key lighting him didn't quite reach him far enough, so we just turned on this other light here on the light rig, and that's what's giving him the edge light. Then when we moved on to these close hand shots, we moved that key light down into the seats and just made it a little less toppy and more coming from the side. And the only other lighting thing differently that we did for these was just put a 4x4 frame of highlight material in front of the light. Then the next shot of her walking down the hallway wasn't shot on a gimbal. It was just me sitting on a gurney and some of the crew was pushing me on it. So as we're doing this shot, the lighting department's slowly going back in there and pre-lighting the next room. So for this one, there wasn't much room to put lights through the windows, so we just lit it on the inside. We used 2 600Ds here, one's in a softbox and one's through the spotlight, to recreate that window ambient light. Then we had a slightly warmer falconized backlight for him. Then we just put black everywhere else to add contrast and block the ceiling lights. This other light here was just an edge light for her as she walks in. Alrighty, for this scene of the guy at the table, the location couldn't turn off any of the house lights for us. So instead we just put up a few black floppies and that blocked them out. Then the light that's hitting the wall there, that was two 600Ds through spotlights outside. So the table was built by the art department and it had these lights in it, but they weren't quite bright enough. So we threw in a few falconized lights to boost the level a bit. And we shot it at 3200 Kelvin, that's why it's quite blue. Then in the grade, they just pushed it a bit more blue and added that animation. So as I'm editing this, I saw another good question, which was, what's my thoughts on the final piece and am I happy with it? Commercials are a tricky one as a DOP because you come on in pre-production as so much has already happened and then you do the shoot and then you step off and usually you're not involved in the edit or the grade. So the next time you see it might not be until it's on the TV or online somewhere. I'm pretty happy with how this turned out. But you know, with commercials, at the end of the day, you're making a video for someone else's business. So there's a brief to follow and there's a look that that company has. So it's never going to be the same as making your own passion project. All right, then straight after that table shot, we went out and filmed this scene of the guy on the road. And we were shooting this pretty quick. I think we shot this in about 10 minutes. So we just found a spot that there wasn't too much street light front lighting the scene. Then we just put up that falconize behind him. This -15 here was us trying to take out some of the green from the street fluoro lights, just trying to take some out in camera. So one thing that we couldn't actually see very well in this shot was the watch. So rather than going back inside and getting another light, we just used a phone torch. Profesh. For these shots, we really wanted to be here in the daytime because it had all this really nice dappled light that was happening that we missed out on because the schedule didn't really allow us to be here at that time. So we had to shoot after the sun had gone behind the hill. So for the sort of 45 minutes that we had to get these 4 shots, we just ran around with that Intelitech light and tried to add a little bit more shape to the shots. There's always a bit of a fine line with lighting at the end of the day, trying to make it look natural. This one here is a bit unnatural, but this was right at the end of the day and all the camera settings were maxed out and it was quite dark. This one here at the beach, that was just natural, as is. This one here in the office, we just had a 300D and then we put a bit more blue on top of it and just bounced it up into the ceiling. Someone asked if we shot this a bit brighter and brought it down, but it was pretty close to this. All right, and for the scene here of the guy at the velodrome, we shot a few different versions of him walking down the hall. We tried to use the wheelchair, but ended up just using the easy rig because it had a bit more energy to it. That red light down the end was just a sky panel bashing into the wall because, you know, it doesn't have to make sense. Then he was just walking under these practical lights and that's all the lighting there was. And yeah, we shot this pretty blue as well. It was 2800 Kelvin on the camera. So the arena had a very soft ambient top light. So for these shots of the watch and him breathing on the bike, we just added some neg on the camera side and then had a sky panel through a diffusion frame, adding a bit more shape to it. And all the camera settings in this one are pretty normal, 5600 Kelvin, 180 shutter. So we wanted to do some shots of the camera mounted to the bike or the camera mounted to a traveling bike. And then in pre-production, we saw they had these camera bikes here that had little mounts on them. And we tried to get someone in to ride them for us, but they couldn't end up getting someone. So we ended up just bringing this like real casual everyday sort of bike and just mounted the Komodo to that. Put the 11-20 on it and kind of just hoped for the best, really. The shots were really shaky because we didn't have any stabilization, but it kind of worked pretty well for the energy of the scene. So I mean, I looked pretty stupid riding this bike around, but you know, it was either me look like a dick and try and get some interesting shots or just not do it at all, really.
Keep up, Craig.
I think they worked out pretty good. This was the one we used, but there was a few others. All right, that's gonna do it. If you have any other questions that I missed, just chuck them in the comments and I'll see you next time.